Hello and welcome back to the Sports Influence podcast. Today we're sitting down with an incredible guest with a story of resilience and transformation. We're joined by Simon Cusden, a former professional cricketer who played for Kent and Derbyshire as well as the England under-19 squad. But Simon's journey goes far beyond the field. After his time in sport, he battled a debilitating struggle with alcoholism, hitting rock bottom and entering rehab. Now in long-term recovery, Simon is a testament to what's possible after hitting your lowest point. He's now a successful coach for high-performing corporate individuals and a founding partner of the company Whole People Group. This is a deep conversation that touches on some very difficult and sensitive topics, including addiction and substance use. This may be challenging for some listeners, and we recommend listening with care. Let's get into it. Thanks for coming on the podcast, first of all, because we wanted to take you back, first of all, to when you were playing for England against Bangladesh. Great match. You took multiple wickets. Who was the Simon Cusden that was there then on that day?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, England under 19s. So there's always a part of me that goes, no, it wasn't England, right? It was England under 19. But it was 2004, and that was the year that I played really well. Made my first class debut that year, and I bowled well all year round. Felt very free. It was Headingley, which is quite a quick pitch.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say this like rudely, but I remember just thinking that the Bangladeshis were really small. And they were just all really small. And I remember we shook their hand before the test match, and I remember they have like really, they were like really like beautiful handshakes. And I'm just this like angry 19-year-old.
Fast ball.
I'm like, if I can break one of their hands in a handshake, I'm already one up on them. Mate, I was a really angry. I've got to be honest. I was a really angry man when I was playing cricket. I was, that's what made me bowl fast. I had a lot of fire in me. I've still got it now. I try and channel it better, but I think that was the year that everything was working really well. So I think, mate, my 19s team, that Test series in the 19s, a lot of the guys weren't playing 19s because they were playing county stuff. So Bapara, Cook. But 2 years before I went to Australia with England under 19s, that was a serious team. So I think in that team we had Luke Wright. And Luke Wright bowled quick back then too.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Alistair Cook played a few games for us. I remember him captaining at Sophia Gardens. And a few of the Bangladeshi guys went on to play well. But good times, just young and trying to bowl as fast as I could.
Yeah. So how many years were you in that England setup? Because it must have been a tough selection process to get in there. Because I know you were at Kent for a bit, Derbyshire for a bit. So where was the lead up into that under-19s England squad?
I got dropped from Kent under 15s for being too fat.
And they always give you an excuse.
No, back then that's what the coach said. You're too fat. You can't say that these days. But he said to me, Simon, you're too fat. We can't pick you. And I did. I responded really well to that. So when I was 15, I've always been tall. I got in the gym and I trained. And there was a bit of a, can I swear on your podcast?
Yeah.
There was a bit of a fuck you to the coach, which was, I've still got that definitely too. I like being told I can't do something. And I remember I just trained up at the Kent County ground. I was 15. And then when I was 16, I was playing for England under 17s. And I remember them being picked, the same coach. He wasn't allowed to select me because I was being picked for the year above. So I jumped up a couple of notches, toured around with England, South England, did well. India came over, just did well in like the regional games.
Yeah.
But I was an all-rounder at that point. And, when I ended up playing cricket professionally, my batting fell away a little bit. But at that point, I was batting six and opening the bowling.
Okay, that's really not bad. And what about the dressing room kind of culture at that time as well? Because I'm guessing it's changed over the years in that early 2000s. Kind of, it must have been quite an intense, especially for yourself being an opening bowler or a fast bowler. Was it really much? You mentioned you were quite angry, probably a lot of testosterone flying around. How was that dressing room culture? Working with some of the big players.
It was amazing, mate. That was the thing. I learnt so much. So I went away with England under 19s when I was 17, and then I came back and I started training with Kent.
Yeah.
And I'm a Kent boy. I'm from Canterbury. My school was up the road, so Simon Langton out the back of the school, and I used to climb the back of the fence to go and watch Matt Walker, Dave Fulton, Mim Patel, these guys. I used to go and watch them, and then suddenly I'm training Mark Elam, Matt Fleming. I was training with them, and I you know, if I reflect back on it, we had Steve Waugh was an overseas player. Before I played a first or a second 11 game, my phone, I must have been 17. The phone rang at my dad's house, and we're like working class. And I think the phone must have rang. My dad went, "Steve Waugh's on the phone." And I went, "What?" And he went, "Yeah." And then it was Steve Waugh who rang my house to see if I could come and bowl him. He said, "Oh, hello, hello, mate."
That must have been
he said, because I think the first 11 and the second 11 were away on a tour. And then I went up to the Kent ground, and it was just me and Steve Waugh with a guy called Ian Brayshaw, who was our coach. And I just bowled at Steve Waugh for like an hour when I was 17. And I must have bowled pretty well, because the next thing I was playing second 11 cricket, you know, but it was different back then. I mean, I don't know what it's like now. It's been a long time since, but back then it was, you know, the senior players were the senior players, right? You just did as you were told. I remember going and getting lunches, but, you know, it wasn't there was no bullying, but there was a real sense of hierarchy. There was a sense of respect. You know, I remember Andrew Simons, I don't know if you remember him, Australian cricketer.
No.
Oh, my word. Well, he was our overseas player. He was maybe the greatest fielder of all time.
Oh, wow.
Incredible standards. I mean, he made us train hard. But I was a village cricketer that went up from village cricket to England under-19s into second 11. So I always had that imposter syndrome. You know, I never felt comfortable when I was playing. When I was training, I did, and I loved being in the change room, because I just loved watching these like masters prepare. I was obsessed with just watching the way that they prepared, how meticulous they were about the way that they prepared for the game, just the mindset. Loved every second of the off the field stuff.
Yeah, because I think that from what you've just said there, for the listeners, because he was the overseas in our home club, Elveston Cricket Club, back, what was it, how long ago was it?
2007, 2009.
2007, and I think that coaching style really rubbed off on yourself, because especially in the field, you kept extremely high standards from what I can remember from yourself. I was quite young at that point, but you pushed Elveston out of a hole and brought us up, promoted to the Prem. You held such a high standard, and I think you got the whole club behind you, which then pushed that first team up. But amazing achievement that is. And we were speaking a little bit before about sometimes, especially when you're playing in these big teams, you have what they call sometimes the athlete identity trap.
Yeah.
So kind of sport becomes your identity. Yeah. We experienced a lot of that rowing. I mean, Shay, you were at Oxford Brookes, one of the best rowing places in the world, and myself at Durham. And sometimes when you're doing it day in, day out, you mould to the team, you mould to the sport and what's expected of you. And if there was such a high standard and you were playing with such high standard of players, did you ever feel that sometimes you molded yourself to the team and other people rather than being? Did you feel like sometimes you put a mask on or with that angry person when actually was that yourself?
That's a great question. I mean, yeah, totally. I mean, if you even think about the nature of performance, right? Like, performance means you've got to go out there and get the job done, which means anything that isn't relevant to getting the job done becomes irrelevant, right? So if you're a Broadway actor and you're playing a role of a vulnerable, you know, emotional role, you can take that out onto the stage. But when you're out in a high pressure environment on a sports field, you have to be able to focus, and you can't be emotional. You have to be objective. And the angry thing's interesting, because at the time I had it quite channeled. It was later on I realised that it was, you know, it came from not, you know, I was trying to prove myself. Everything was about proving myself. It didn't come from a place of that I felt like I was enough.
Yeah.
Right. Like if I have a healthy sense of self and then I go and express myself from that place, it's different. But if I hate myself, I don't like myself, and then I'm trying to prove myself from that place, I had a lot of that, and it's interesting you talk about identity, because my identity was so ingrained in being a fast bowler that when I took a wicket, I was a success. And when I bowled the ball down the leg side, it's like I went down the leg side.
Yeah.
Right. So it was like, my identity was going up and down and round because I had no concrete sense of self. I was just a fast bowler. And if I bowl well, I'm a success. And if I bowl poorly, I'm a failure. The problem is you're a bowler, you bowl poorly most of the time. So you can't do that. But what it's given me now is, I think it's an important skill to know when to compartmentalize to get the job done, to be able to be aware of your emotions, to have some of that. But I think if you're shutting it off and pushing it down, and I remember being in those environments and being pretty switched on to like, there's something not right here. The amount of drinking that was going on, the amount of, I just remember thinking that you're superhuman when you go out on the field, but actually there's a lot of broken people in this room.
Yeah.
Right. You've been part of sports change rooms where you're like, I remember thinking, take Shane Warne, for instance, I got to play against him twice, just spending some time with him off the field. I saw the man behind Shane Warne, and I saw how vulnerable he was.
Yeah.
Right. And how vulnerable everybody was. So if I had my time again, and now when I get groups of people together, it's about trying to be real, trying to be real and open. And there's a sense of safety that can come with that. Like if you can go and be yourself, but still go out on the field and do the job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've experienced it loads through swimming and through rowing, in that it's kind of twofold that I've seen. Is sometimes it's within the group itself, where we talk about the nature of performance. If people are performing better or they're better at that sport, they're instantly seen as superior to other people within that group. And then secondly, just for that sense of self, when you're performing well, you instantly just feel like so much better about yourself. It feels like it's your whole identity. I'm this, for example, when I was swimming, I'm this swimmer that does this. If I have a bad race, then I'm not that fast swimmer anymore. But yeah, and then when you leave, say I stopped rowing this year, I look back and I think, why did I care so much?
Yeah.
And I've had this conversation with so many people that have stopped rowing.
Yeah.
They always look back and think, there's so much more to your life than just that sport at that moment, but you can't see it because you're so tunnel visioned into what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's just like, you look back and think, why was I so bothered?
Well, you have to be, right? Like if you want to be excellent at anything, even now, there's 3 or 4 things in my life I'm trying to be excellent at. The difference between trying to be, say, an excellent father and the difference between being excellent at a skill, which requires like rowing in a straight line, right? Like it's not a particularly emotional skill. It's a physical skill. It's a mental skill. So I think that there is, the way that I've worked with my clients now, and it's helped me a lot with my teachers and coaches that I work with, is to realize that there's a lot more to a human being than we're mind and body, right? Everyone's heard about that. Well, what about emotions and, relationships? And there's all this other stuff. But the emotional side, I think we as men are very good at just shutting that off. But actually so what you get is you get the performance, but you don't get the fulfillment because you're not feeling the fear, but you're also not feeling the joy. So the thing that I've seen a lot of is people win and it just doesn't feel like, it actually just doesn't feel that much, right? Because it's just like next. Just next. That's dangerous if you can't stop and enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think, especially because I spent my last year rowing at Brooks last year, and I kind of at that point just thought, that's my last year rowing, I'm going to be done. So I was quite lucky in that I kind of noticed that early on, and that last 2 or 3 months, it was just all about enjoying it as much as possible.
Nice.
But it is something that people forget because they're always thinking like, say they've won Henley, it's now, how am I going to get on the GB team, or how am I going to win this next thing? There's always something else they want to do.
But we idolise people like that. So take Jordan, like Michael Jordan, for instance. There's stories about him winning his first ring and he's putting 2 fingers up to the coach to say, I'm on my second one. That like relentless, like next. Like that's, we think that that's healthy, right?
Yeah,
But it's the opposite of healthy. You know, if I had my cricket career again, I would take my time to look up in the stands at Lords, and you know, I got to be 12th man at Lords, and when I was 12th man at Lords, I was thinking, fuck's sake, I want to be playing, right? And I was sitting there just pissed off for 4 days while I was 12th man at Lords. And now I'm a bit older, I'm thinking, bloody hell, I've got to be 12th man at Lords.
Yeah.
But you know, it's, or like, you know, I remember playing against a guy called Vikram Solanki, who played for England a long time ago.
Yeah.
I bowled him at New Road. I bowled the best ball I've ever bowled at anyone to Vikram Solanki. I mean, he hit me over mid-on for 6. Right? He just lifted me over mid-on for 6. And I remember being so annoyed. But now that's a memory. I'll cherish that memory of like the best ball I ever bowled, or just the losses, right? Like the way that you can lose with a group of people and you can pick each other up. Some of the tough times I've been through with some of the teams I've played in, or the hard training, or there's so much more to sport than just the gold shiny thing, right? Because the gold shiny thing just doesn't last. You know, it doesn't last. You make 100 one day, you can make a duck the next day. You know, you win a race, you lose a race. Winning and losing. I had a brilliant coach who was at the last school I worked at on the Gold Coast, and kids used to go to him. He's best coach I've ever worked with, Steve Baker, if you're watching. He goes, kid would go to him and go, Bakes, I made 100. And you go, I'm so sorry. And they go, what? And you go, well, you're not going to learn anything, are you? And then another one would go, Bakes, I made a duck. And you go, brilliant, high fives. They go, what? And you go, well, just think how much more you're going to learn. Right. And the other thing he did was this brilliant thing where a kid would make 100, and you go, do you think you made 100? And they go, yeah, I made 100. And you go, yeah, but who bowled the half volleys at you to make 100? You go, well, the opposition. He goes, good job they bowled poorly, isn't it? And you go, yeah. And you go, okay, were there stumps? And they go, yeah, there was some stumps. Good job there was some stumps, wasn't it? Otherwise you wouldn't have been able to play cricket. And then you go, did it rain? Did it rain? No, it was a nice day. Good job it was a nice day. And otherwise you wouldn't have been able to play. So what about the captain? Did he set good fields when you were batting? No, he set shit fields when we were batting. Good job he set shit fields, isn't it? He said, did you thank the opposition for playing poorly so you could make 100? You know, and he was like, and he tried to teach everyone that cricket was this like interconnected, and good days, bad days, they come and they go, like almost a spiritual way of looking at the game, right? Or sport is way better than that. Because, you know, Sachin Tendulkar, I remember being taught by another great coach of mine, Sachin Tendulkar's succeeding 30% of the time. Yeah. Right? So he fails 70% of the time. Right, that's Sachin. What do you want? And I remember thinking I want to succeed all the time. So I want to be 2.5 times better than Sachin Tendulkar. Like, it's failure. That's what sport is all about. It's about losing and failing. You rip muscle fibers, they come back stronger. It's not about winning, it's about losing. 100%.
Yeah, no, I completely see that. And when when you're in the moment and you're young, you're driven, it must be quite hard to take that step back and look at everything. Impossible. It's easy to say that now.
It's just impossible. I don't even think it's hard. I think it's actually impossible.
Yeah.
That's the fucked up thing about my whole life. And I remember when I was younger, I had older players going, if I could put my brain inside my body, if I could put this brain and this heart inside my body back then when I could bowl 90 mile an hour, oh my word, I'd be such a better player. Yeah. Because I had no life experience. I had no perspective. I hadn't experienced enough actual life stuff to realise how insignificant sport is, or winning is, you know, and what's important. You have to learn what's important.
Yeah. It's funny you say about, you know, how important the culture is and looking at the game holistically, because what I see as quite a shame at the moment is the village cricket scene, and how when I first joined, it was so much more of a community in that, you know, there was the tees as the main one. Yeah. Everyone would go to the club after the game on a Saturday, have a drink, have a laugh, which is what cricket's all about. And it seems like over the past few years, COVID obviously didn't help. But they don't have the cricket tees anymore, and everyone goes, yeah, you're not allowed them. And it just seems like it's lost a bit of that community feel, which is what it's all about. And integrating the juniors with the seniors that have that outlook and that it's all about enjoying it. And you have, you know, at Elveston, there was, you know, you had the fourth team and you had the first team. Yeah. First team was, you had some people like yourself who were running the ship, and then a load of juniors. Yeah. Because you need young people in the field and that side of things. And in the fourth team, you had people who were big back in the day. Yep. You had people like Pete and those guys who had won the Village Cup and things like that. So it was really nice to have that holistic experience and exposure within the club to teach the juniors and get that real feel of community, which just seems to be disappearing a little bit. Like,
definitely. And I think, you know, what you're talking about is like eldership and mentoring and, you know, learning properly. I mean, for me, when I was at Elveston last in 2017, I'm running a training session the way that I was taught to run training sessions, right? And then I'd like to think there's a couple of people who are part of that who get inspired by the way you train, and now they train. That's how the game grows, right? It's like lineage, you know, like there's like, I'm a culmination of all the best and worst coaches I've been a part of, but I was in person with them in changing rooms, on the field. I think it's, well, I don't know so much I mean, you know, sport for me is, I don't watch a great deal of cricket on the TV because cricket's different for me now. I work with former players who are in addiction, and cricket put me through rehab. You know, the Players Cricketers Association looks after the cricketers. I've just got a different view of cricket. I just see the top of cricket as just like this tiny little speck of cricket, right? But what we do is, Josh Butler's obviously, I use an example, I could use anybody, but Josh Butler, right, best one-day player. Why is he more important than the 9-year-old girl who has anxiety, who's learning to play a cover drive, and just the simple act of hitting a ball out of the middle could change the whole course of her life?
yes.
Right, that's cricket, you know, and I've seen that in schools, I've seen that in clubs. That's cricket. And Mike Hendrick used to talk to us about, who's my bowling coach at Derby, he spoke about mother cricket.
Yeah. We're going to get onto that.
Yeah, and it was, you know, just that's cricket for me. And that's why the 100's great, because it's getting kids to come along.
Yeah.
That's the best thing about it. I mean, the cricket's all right, it's nice to watch, but it's about getting people together. The best thing about those people are out in the stands. They're not in their homes. They're not on screens, right? They're like out of the cricket, screaming at the supporting people. That for me is cricket or sport. You know, it's bigger than just that. Doesn't exist without the top players, but it's just not about that. You know, it's the grassroots of sport is something that, as I get older, I think it's just crucial that gets taken care of. You know, teas and mums. You know, the roles that mums play, or the role that women play in men's sport, right? Just having the mums and the aunts around. And now the best thing that's happened to sport in the last 10 years is girls and women.
Yeah.
100%. Just seeing girls and women playing sport the way they are at the moment is brilliant. Because 20 years ago, I mean, how crazy is it? 20 years ago, that wasn't even a thing.
Yeah, think about football and the Lionesses at the moment.
Just amazing, right?
Yeah.
Just to have little girls aspiring to become something, because 50 years ago it was you became a mum.
Yeah.
That was it. That's your pathway. Now sport you can have a career, you can travel the world, you can get skills. Like, just brilliant. That's the best thing that's happened to sport in the best thing that's happened to our culture actually in a really long time.
100% agree. And I think one thing that can't be understated, at least from our experience as well, is the influence that coaches when you're younger have on your life. Like for us, I don't know if you know Mel Marshall.
No.
So Adam Peaty's coach. She was at City of Derby, coached both of us when we were younger.
Right.
And there are multiple coaches we had throughout time at City of Derby, and they just have such a massive impact on the way you see life, giving you those, you know, those little wins when you're younger. Say you swim a length of front crawl, and you've got that little win that makes you want to keep going, and it just has a massive it kind of compounds over time, that impact that they have.
Yeah, just the recognition.
Yeah, 100%.
I've got to say, like, that for me, I came from an abusive childhood where no one got an education, and I had a teacher when I was 9 who said to me, "Do you know you're really smart?" And I was told I was dumb. Growing up, I was told I wasn't smart, and he said, no, Simon, you're really smart. I'm going to spend some extra time with you. And he got me to do my 11 plus, and he spent some time with me, and I passed my Kent test. Or I had like another teacher at school. They saw the best in me, and they told me I could do something which I didn't know, and inspired me. My whole life has been built upon people like that.
Yeah, how did you find the whole schooling experience then? You just touched on it a little bit there. So you went to school in Kent. Did you go to university?
No, I walked out of school at 15. I just walked out the door. Wow. I just knew I wanted to be a cricketer, and I just knew I didn't want to be at school. Did
your school have a cricket team?
Yeah, we had a cricket team, and then maybe I was 16. Yeah, we had a cricket team and it was good. Simon Langton Grammar School I passed, but I just was one of those boys. I mean, I've just recently worked out that I might be ADHD, right? So I'm toying with where to go and get a proper diagnosis, but someone who's really knows what they're doing has said I probably am. And I use that in my big, the company that I'm running and things like that, but I could not sit still. I didn't want to be in a classroom. I couldn't listen. And I just wanted to be outside playing cricket. So I just walked out one day, didn't complete my A-levels.
Oh, wow.
And I'm one of those guys that, just walked out and wanted to be a cricketer. Luckily, I got to do that, right? Because the men in my family they don't go to uni and they end up having to get a trade and they don't end up going anywhere. So,
right, yeah. So you're a bit of a trailblazer in that sense.
I don't think that's what I was thinking about at the time. It was more,
yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, I'm glad I did. I mean, there's a part of me that wishes I love learning but I learn what I want to learn about.
Yeah.
I know the world's changed. You don't need a degree like you used to. But I got my training was from being a professional cricket player.
Yeah.
That was my university, I guess you could say it like that, right? Like, because for 6 or 7 years I was dedicated and devoted to a craft training. I had good teachers around me, good coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely. But we spoke obviously before this podcast a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about mother cricket and that kind of influence that had on you. And is it Mike Hendrick? Tell me about that and what that means to you.
Well, when I was at Kent, I was a fast bowler being coached by wicket keepers, right? So I had great guys, great coaches, but they were wicket keepers who had done their level 4 coaching courses. And one of them went on to be an England cricket coach, great coach, but they were wicket keepers. Right, and I didn't know what I was missing out on being a fast bowler until I went and worked with Mike Hendrick, and I was working with a guy who had 800 first-class wickets, but just knew about fast bowling. And I remember the first day I worked with him at Derby, I was so technical in the way that I was everything. I bowled the ball down the leg side, and I was just doing all this with my arms, and he was at the back of the net, like a pipe and a.
Right.
Oh yeah, old school, like proper old school. And I went up to him and he just went, "Cuzzy, what's up?" And I went, "Oh, why did it go down the leg side, Hendo?" And I was, "Is it my left arm? Is it?" And he went, "'Cause you fucking bowled it down there, you ginger cunt." And I went, and he went, "Cuzzy, it's not complicated." He said, "Don't bowl at cut shot and don't bowl at legs." He went, "Just fucking bowl fast." And he was like that. And he was just like, and then he just simplified that. Like, no technical. He said, "Cuzzy, if you feel good, you'll bowl well." And I'll never forget that. He said, if you feel good, you'll bowl well. So his whole thing was around helping me feel good. He said, it doesn't matter whether you've got your left arm. If you feel good, you will bowl well. I remember coming in and he would just say, I remember being really sore in a pre-season and he just said, "Go home." Just sent me home because I was sore. Because he knew his own body well enough that he could just tell when I was sore. But he also was old school. I remember having a calf injury and he just said to me, "Yeah, you got shit calves." I remember going,
"Get some heat on."
He goes, "Bowling will teach you where you're shit." He said, "I remember my back sore, shit back." And he'd go in the gym. He was old school. He bowled bowlers into the ground. He broke a lot of bowlers. He was like the old horses, right? You had to break us in. He was old school. But when he spoke to me about cricket, there was a sense that he just had a spiritual view of cricket. Where Mother Cricket come from is we played Cambridge Uni and we all went out the night before. We had a couple of good players in our team, but we went out the night before and got drunk. I'm now in recovery, right? So this was the day when I used to drink.
Yep.
And I remember they were none for Cambridge Uni, right? And we're Derbyshire. They were none for 100 or 120 for none at lunch because we were all not in a good way, and he very rarely would lose it, and he lost it. And he gave us this lecture about mother cricket, and he said to us, "Do not fuck with mother cricket."
Wow.
Right? And he just gave us this lesson. I remember, and it just stuck with me. You don't fuck with the game, right? You just don't screw with the game, right? And he just had this absolute respect for the game, and if you disrespected the game, it's almost like he was like a knight of mother cricket, right? Just there, just with his sword, and he just reminded us that this game needs to be respected. And I remember when I lost my contract at Derby, he gave me the news and he'd said to me, "I don't think you should be a cricketer." And he didn't have to say that, but he told me the truth. And I remember he had tears in his eyes and he gave me a hug And he said, I think you need to do something else. And then he said to me, but Mother Cricket's can look after you if you look after the game.
Yeah. Wow.
Fast forward all this time later, and I'm in rehab. I've always tried to do right by cricket. I'm a village cricketer. You know, I come from like my dad wouldn't even be good enough to play most fourth 11s, but he's a village legend, right? Like, I've just tried to think about cricket like that, and it's always like, you wouldn't be here today, right?
Yeah.
You just wouldn't be here without cricket. You wouldn't be in my home doing a podcast without cricket. I've been to the other side of the world, and I've bumped into people who know people who are playing cricket. Next thing I know, we're having dinner together. It's just like looked after me, you know. Now I've got kids. I've no interest. If they want to be good cricketers, that's fine, but to plug them into the network of cricket. Now in my business, you know, of people, my business wouldn't be here without my cricket network.
We wouldn't know each other without cricket.
So the game itself is, and Hendo left us with that. He was ferocious if you screwed with the game. Ferocious. If you didn't train properly, didn't prepare properly, if you took the game in vain, hell hath no fury like Mother Cricket scorned. That's what he used to say to us all the time.
Wow, it's very powerful.
Yeah, it is, and that's cricket, right?
Yeah.
So I remember thinking when you know, when David Warner and Steve Smith got the ban for the ball tampering, you know, I remember thinking, first thing I thought actually was how many of us had got away with it, because we used to stick all sorts of shit on the ball when we were playing.
Right, yeah.
Right, everyone knows that. And then the next thing I remember thinking, God, Mother Cricket's going to go to town now, right? Because you just can't do that on national TV. Yeah, and it did, right?
Yeah.
So call it karma.
Yeah, just quickly, I want to check the camera and make sure it's still. Yeah, all good. All good.
Do you want a drink or anything?
No, I'm good. I'm just going to stretch my legs a bit.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're at Derbyshire, and it was quite from our research, it was quite a short kind of stint that you had there. Yeah. We just want to touch on what it's like when the dream dies, in that sense. Cricket, you've gone for it, and now you've been potentially dropped, and we've all had it in sports. People have it to different scales and that side of things. But what was it like for you? What did it mean for you when you got dropped from Derbyshire? Because cricket was so important. You dropped school to go to cricket. Obviously, Mother Cricket will stay with you. But what was that like for you?
Well, it's a part of a bigger story, because my sister was diagnosed with cancer at the beginning of my cricket journey with Kent. And she died in 2005, so 2 years into my cricket journey. A year later, I was released by Kent because I started drinking. So I picked up alcohol. So I'm an alcoholic, right? I'm 10 years in recovery, but I'm a proper full-blown alcoholic. Started drinking when I was 9. Whenever I would win, I would drink, lose, but alcohol was my coping strategy, right? So it's my escape coping strategy. So when Derby released me, that was my second time of being released in 2 years, because Kent had released me the year before.
Right.
So it wasn't, and I think with respect to Derby, if you get released from Kent, and I had 3 or 4 other counties, and the reason I went to Derby was to work with Hendo, if you get released from Derby, it's the end, right? Because not many people pick up Derbyshire's scraps, right? So, but I just did what I'd done all that summer, and I just kept on drinking. And I was lucky enough that I was living with a guy called Travis Burt, who was the overseas player, Australian, and I got paid off early by Derby. And I spent the money that I did have getting a flight out to Australia. So I gave myself something to look forward to. I didn't realise that was a giant escape. So I went down to Tasmania, played grade cricket down there. Funnily enough, I played the best cricket I've played probably my whole life down there, because it was the first time I was free. But I also did more drinking than I've ever done. I enjoyed myself more than I've ever done. Didn't have strength and conditioning coaches to tell me where to be. But it was the true answer is, I don't reckon I accepted that my cricket career was over for 10 years after that. It took me 10 years to really grieve the death of that dream. And that was when I was in rehab, post-suicide attempt. I'm in rehab, I've lost everything. And that was when I grieved it. I was like, oh shit, because I think the whole thing was grief, anger, sadness, depression, not just at my cricket career, but my sister dying.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
I had to process the whole thing, and and it's only now coming up to 20 years later, that I feel like a deep sense of gratitude for having ever played at all.
Yeah.
I got out of rehab and I met with one of the guys from the PCA, and a bit like my coach friend, there's a guy called Ian Thomas who's head of player welfare and he's up at the PCA. He used to play for Glamorgan. And I remember saying to Tomo, thank you, right? I played 5 games, right? And that the PCA treated me, because I get lifetime membership to the PCA because I played professionally. They paid God knows how many tens of thousands to my recovery. And I said, thanks, man. Oh, God, it's amazing. You know, Alistair Cook, who I played with growing up, Alistair Cook's been knighted, right? Like, for me to be treated the same. And he said to me, yeah, but, you know, there is no Alistair Cook without you bowling long hops at him at Billericay so he can make 200s in a game.
Yeah.
And I remember that was another little thing of me of like, oh, I got to play cricket, right? Like, if I hadn't been a professional cricket player, I wouldn't have got the chance to get into recovery. I don't think professional cricket gave me a drinking problem. I think I've got a genetic predisposition. I come from a traumatic childhood. I think cricket actually saved me.
Yeah.
Because if I'd been a 16-year-old lad on my council estate where I was growing up, without all that training, without rehab, I might not be here.
So rehab really worked for you?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's changed my whole life.
Yeah.
And that's boot camp, right? Like, rehab is like the hardest training you've ever, because it's emotional training and it's different from physical training. Physical training is easy. You just lift something, move somewhere until you nearly physically die. Emotional training is a whole different thing because you have to go in deep. That was 3 months of proper healing.
Yeah. So obviously you had kind of a difficult upbringing growing up, and then there was a lot of pressure from the cricket side as well, because obviously you put everything into that. So, and then with the alcohol and everything, when did you kind of realise, at what point did you realise that the alcohol was becoming a bit of a problem?
I think I always knew it was a problem, but I think when I realised I needed to get help was when I got hit total rock bottom. So I had no other choice. But that was at 31 years old. You know, that was 9.5 years ago. That's when I actually got sober. So, you know, we say in recovery that you need to hit rock bottom. It's the only thing you actually need to do. Then you get what's called the gift of desperation. I would have done anything. I was so ready to get sober. You know, I was so ready. But it took a really long time for me to act on the fact that I knew I had a problem. I got sober before my actual proper sobriety, and then I relapsed, and that relapse was dark. Right. So, and then I knew I had a problem, because I'd learned in addiction relapses are dark. Yeah. So even now I'm 10 years sober. If I was to have a drink today, within 3 days it'll be as bad as it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, so relapse, when I found that out, I was like, oh, okay, I'm an alcoholic. Because I knew that I can't. Someone said to me the other day, can you have one sip? And I said, well, can you have one step off a cliff? It's just not an option. No, I can't have a sip. And that's how I know I'm an alcoholic, because I can have a sip, but if I do have a sip, everything goes away.
Yeah.
So a long time.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's kind of touching on it, but I think a lot of people, especially in the UK, have a bit of an issue with alcohol, but they won't admit that they do. I know quite a few people that can't go a few days or a week without a drink, and they'll never admit that they've got a little bit of an issue with alcohol. But it's a bit of an issue because they just won't admit it. But I think it is a bit of an issue going throughout the UK.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, especially working in the city, right?
Yeah.
It's obviously it's not to an extreme extent in most cases, but you do find yourself, I know a lot of what you currently do is working with professionals and helping them navigate these sorts of things, but you do find that you're drinking, a lot of people drink most nights, and it's almost because you're swamped in that corporate mind and corporate attitude before you step back and you actually think, oh, I've actually drank every day this week. And it's like drinking every day, suddenly it becomes part of your life, and it's almost, you're enjoying it, and you haven't, but then it's like it's in the background. It's almost becoming part of your daily routine is a drink after work. It's like when you step away from that, are you going to feel like you've lost, something's missing, you know? And that's almost a sign you're almost addicted to a bit of alcohol. But I've definitely seen that corporately, but it's just in the background. It's not necessarily tearing you apart.
No, it's not. But see, I think about alcohol. I number one, I can't get on my soapbox about alcohol because I'm a full-blown alcoholic.
Yeah.
So I can speak with authority, I believe, to someone who's an alcoholic. But my observation of alcohol culturally is a cultural thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I was going to do a stand-up comedy for like an open mic night, and I was going to do this stand-up comedy skit for alcohol, because I come from like a culture where everyone just drinks. You drink all the time. It's not a problem. You just drink, right? Everyone has a drink. But I found out that alcohol is biochemically way worse for the body than heroin, right? Way worse. Way worse, right? And then so my commentary was this, which was, no, I don't have an alcohol. Oh, no, I don't have a heroin problem. I only have a heroin on a Friday night. Can you get me a 6-pack of heroin on the way home? It's like, oh, well, this heroin goes with meat. Oh, this is a white heroin. Oh, this is a red heroin. Oh, this heroin has tasty notes of blueberries. Yeah. No, I don't think there's much of a problem. But, the corporate world, they do heroin most nights. Right, it's like,
Yeah.
And then I go into London and everyone's outside the pub doing heroin, right? And imagine if there was places on the street where everybody gathered to do heroin, right? That's our culture. It's actually worse than what I just said, right? And it's like, yeah, you can just get me a 6-pack heroin. I'm just going to go watch the game and have a few heroins. No, this club were awesome. We used to do loads of heroin afterwards. When we won, we really went on the heroin, right? You win, you do some heroin. You lose, you do some heroin. Like, it's worse than that. Yeah. And what's been really good recently is all the podcast scenes, like guys like Andrew Huberman, neuroscientists coming along and going, any alcohol is too much alcohol. Yeah. It's just a fact. Any. And so now my work is in high performance corporate culture. And I've said to really big time CEOs, your high performance culture is laughable. Because if you're not sleeping well and alcohol is how you're doing deals, and you're not eating properly and you're eating at 9 o'clock at night and everything's being done over booze, that's not high performance. Because cognitive decline does that when you have any alcohol in your system. And so I've said to sales teams and teams of lawyers, imagine what you would be like if you were sober. Right? Imagine if you slept well, you didn't drink alcohol, but the problem our corporate world has got is everything's done. It's how people unwind. We have no capacity to relax without alcohol.
Yeah.
It's how people socialize too. Yeah. Most people have social anxiety. I've been thinking recently, most people really struggle to build relationships.
Yeah.
But you put a few beers in them, and that's how you make friends, right? It's like that you do it over beers. So I think we've got a cultural problem.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an individual, and that's quite nice for an individual because then there's no like shame. You're a part of a culture imagine if you're a part of a culture that said heroin was totally acceptable, and you could just go down the heroin aisle of Tesco and get a deal on it.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned the Andrew Huberman, like Huberman Lab, because I love it. Like, I just love it on there. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but I remember one that just like stuck in my brain where he's talking about the effect alcohol has on sleep, particularly, and how even if you have a drop of alcohol,
you just don't sleep. You just don't sleep.
And you might feel like you're sleeping better, but you're just in and out of sleep, light sleep and everything, and it has a massive impact.
I think this is the link between sport and alcohol. I think there's a very strong link between sport and alcohol. It used to be sport and cigarettes, sports and betting. I'd love to see sport move out of that in the future because, Cristiano Ronaldo's not drinking, right? This is not me as the alcoholic, but I would just love to think that in 50 years' time, in the 1920s, there were posters up that said smoke because it's good for your lungs. The doctor used to say if you had lung problems, you should smoke cigarettes. Yeah. And I would love to think we'll get to that point where we'll go, fucking hell.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
It's just
oh my
so
God,
ingrained.
Yeah, it is. I think it's ingrained. It's changing. You guys are changing. Your generation are changing it because I think alcohol consumption is down in some parts of the culture, like 70, 80%. People are waking up. They're going, no, I don't want to do that. The problem is now gambling is on the way up because everyone's got a phone and things like that. So it's being replaced by other things. But
yeah, and I think the good thing about, well, at least when I was a little bit younger, it was sometimes like, oh, you're not having a drink. It was a bit of a joke. like you were just seen as boring if you don't have a drink. I'm having a Coke or a water. It's
Yeah.
like
So you left
annoying.
it.
But nowadays it's bit like that's way more normalised than it was
Yeah, that's good,
when we
isn't
were
it?
younger. That
Yeah.
you just go out and have water. Everyone's like, yeah, it doesn't
Yeah, maybe
matter.
we are. And even now, you know, it's more. If I think back to, so I talk about Marcus Trescothick quite a lot. In 2009, 2007, Marcus Trescothick came out as having depression. And it was a big deal, right? Because he's a trailblazer. Him and Jonathan Trott and those guys, they came out and went, I'm struggling, I have depression. Nowadays, you know, Ben Stokes with his documentary around some of the stuff he's been through, I think he's now sober and looking bowling well, because I definitely think he's bowling better because he's off the booze. It's just easier now and way more acceptable to be vulnerable and be real.
Yeah, do you think in a corporate world, so coach, I'm going to take you back to sports coaches. In a high performance setting, there's pressure from the sports coach not to drink, not to do all the drugs, or, you know, it's if you're seen going out, then the coach will say you dropped, you know. Do you think managers, senior managers, directors, partners in a corporate world should take more of an ownership in keeping their team more high performing? That they should say, guys, why have you been for a drink? You know, why have you been out drinking last night? We've got clients. Do you think they should take more ownership? Because it's a really interesting point, and I've never seen that. You know, it's almost sometimes they'll laugh at it. You know, oh, you had a drink last night. You know, great. You know, I got to bed 2 a.m. You know, you lad. You know, it's not really seen. But does it need that manager to say that's not good enough? You know, if you want to be high performing, you got to do this, this, and this.
I mean, that's a bloody good point. I think if you're ballsy enough to create that, I mean, I've been and done keynotes at conferences where I'm up there as a wellbeing speaker and talk about high performance and wellbeing. They're my two areas. And I'm looking over a sea of people who look like shit. They're just tired. Their conference is basically a piss up. And then I'll be there because the turnover in the company is flat, right? And I'll be like talking to them in the lead up going, well, we're getting everybody together in this conference, an internal conference, because we want to talk about the performance of the company. And we want to talk about the fact that we haven't grown in the last 10 years, right? And I remember being up on this stage and I literally had the graph going like that. And I looked and I was like, that turnover's dead because the people are dead. If you want to improve, you know, the biggest improvement could be in the people. What clients want to be, surely clients or potential clients want to feel good, and people feel good in the presence of other people who feel good. And I just thought, oh my word, this is just, and this company would be probably one of the better law firms in the world. And I remember thinking this, if they just really took on what it meant to be well-being and high performance, but they call themselves a high performance culture. To answer your question, it's a bloody good question. I mean, if I was going to start, you know, I can't, you know, how would I feel now if I've got associates in Whole People Group? If they, to be honest, I only employ healthy people. You know, yeah. I think it would be on the onboarding and the recruitment bit. You know, I think if you wanted to really shake up an industry, you should start a teetotal company and just watch the results, you know, because clients, like, imagine that if you had a teetotal company, you go, oh, I'm going to work with them because they mean business, right? Really bring the elite.
Yeah, so just to touch on that point a bit, in a lot of the big corporates, I think there's an issue with socials. So you get your work social, you know, you have your summer, and they're all based around drinking. It'll be, let's go to the pub as a team. And I do sometimes feel, I do feel for example, Muslims in the company or whatever that don't drink, but there's so many socials in all companies in London especially, where it is, let's go to the pub, let's go do karaoke, which is it's a lot of drinking involved. And it's like, what can companies do? Little things, little steps to change their culture socially to kind of remove the drinking from the equation, because from what I've seen, drinking is the main issue. I mean, I can't speak for banks and other things because there's obviously stories about what it was in the 90s, even early 2000s about drugs in that side of things. But it's an interesting point. And what can companies do? The little small things, like putting a ban on going to the pub for a social. Like That's something that the partners, directors could do.
I think you've got to start by going to let's look at where we're actually at. Disengagement costs $8 trillion globally. Quiet quitting, retention, attrition, it's all burnout. 77% of people are saying they're burning out. So if you look at the numbers, they're atrocious, right? And the answer to that, I don't think there is an answer to that. So whatever we are doing culturally, or whatever people are doing culturally, it's not working. It's not working, right? Because people are burning out. Now, people think they're burning out because they're working too hard. I think they're burning out because they're unhealthy. Right? If you're healthy, you get 30, 40, 50% more energy. Yeah. I just think we might be just very, very, very unhealthy, or getting healthier as we go along. But I think the other thing too is, and I've thought this a bit about my days in the sports change room. If you and I get pissed together, there's a feeling that we've got to know each other.
Yeah.
Right. But actually, if we were to properly talk to each other and not in that drunk state, we'd really get to know each other. Yeah. Right. So team building and bonding and all that, when you get alcohol out of the equation, people have to really face their social anxieties. I think people do because they just don't know how to socialise. Yeah, most people don't know how to. 100% and now we socialise either with a drink or like this.
Yeah.
So that's now social. Mm-hmm. That's easy, and it's easy to be social if you're pissed.
Yeah, everyone's social. Like I know people that won't struggle to say a sentence when they're not pissed, and then as soon as they have a drink, they're absolutely loving it, having a great time, dancing and all of that.
I get a lot of people come to me who they think they're alcoholics, and I know they're not. I know they're just socially anxious. Mm. And I know that if I could deal with a social anxiety, then they won't need the alcohol to give them Dutch courage, right? That's what they call it, Dutch courage. But alcohol for me did two things. It made me feel brave and it made me feel relaxed. And I remember my first sponsor saying to me, alcohol's not a problem, it's a solution to a problem. Brilliant, right? But one of the first things I got taught, he said, it's not a problem, it's solving your problem. So what's your problem? And then he went, do this sentence, alcohol makes me feel. And I went, relaxed. He said, well, there's your problem. You don't know how to relax. So I didn't know how to relax. Yeah. So alcohol makes me feel courageous. He said, well, you've got to learn to generate courage without alcohol. So if you know how to relax and you know how to stand up in front of people or something without it, you don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of people, it is a fantastic drug. It helps people, the illusion of sleep. It's brilliant at what it does. It is the most widely available anti-anxiety medication on the planet. Mm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's an anti-anxiety medication.
Mm. Yeah. And I know, especially from growing up and a lot of within around circles from home, growing up in school, like a lot of people started drinking quite young, classic going to the park.
Yeah.
Getting a bottle of vodka from Blue Shop down the road. It's it starts from so young in a lot of communities. Yeah. And then people can struggle to come away from that because they're so used to the feeling of going out on a Friday or Saturday night with schoolmates, having a drink.
It's petrifying. I remember the first time I was sober and I had to go dating or meet a girl or speak to my friends. You feel like you're like a little baby lamb, right?
Yeah.
I'd only ever dated or been with women when I was, and then, I met my wife and I'm sober. And you feel like you've got nowhere to hide, right? Because you can hide when you've got booze, but there's nowhere to hide. You feel like you've got proper, real, since I've been sober, I only have obviously sober friends and I've got real friendships.
Yeah.
Because it's not based around, we actually know each other rather than the mask. There's a social mask thing to booze, right? If you're actually an anxious person and then you drink and you pretend you're not, then you're behind there as an anxious person, right? I'm gradually getting more confident, but booze creates a persona. Your whole company's built on that, and then your clients are.
Yeah. I think part of the issue, just back to the corporate drinking, part of the issue is that that it's kind of an unwritten rule, but everyone knows that if the higher ups are going out on a Friday night for a drink, you better be there. If you want to progress your career, you have to be there. And if you're serious, it's sad, but it is true that you have to be there chatting with them, having a drink, just getting to know them. And I think that's part of the issue, and that if the people higher up kind of help to dispel that and go along with, I don't know, going out for a meal or something different rather than just going out to a pub or a club, it'd make a massive difference with that.
It's almost like
you guys need to start a movement. You guys need to start a company that stands for this stuff. It's great ideas. I mean, absolutely.
It's really interesting. It's really stimulating conversation, because in central London, you're talking like Bank, Canary Wharf. It'd be great to get some non-alcoholic pubs that don't serve a drop of alcohol, where you could go in, and you've got companies now like Impossible Brew. The CEO of Impossible Brew, or the co-founder, came to talk at Durham, and I went along to his talk.
Right.
And his brand is a non-alcoholic beer that has the herbs. He's from a country in Asia, and he's brought in these herbs and stuff he learnt from his grandma on that side of things, and it gives you the same relaxation as beer because of these herbs and things like that. And if you can create a whole pub where there's different flavors of this stuff, and you brand it on, high performance, this should be in the center of all the corporate areas in London. If you can make,
we might have to cut this out.
If you can make a chain out of it around London in all these spots, then I feel like it's a bit different. It's like you go, your partners can be like, right, everyone, we're going to the, like a Brewdog, massive pubs in the middle of London. And if you can make one of those huge spaces, I reckon people would lapse it up.
Well, I think that, there's another way of looking at this, and this is why.
This is getting cut out.
Yeah. Well, I feel, in my recovery, I found meditation, mindfulness, Buddhist practices, and a lot of the mind training and the breath training, I can feel pretty pissed.
Yeah.
I can get high on my own supply pretty easily, right? Like if you think about, it's all just a biochemical reaction inside the body. You're just using alcohol to give it to, like, I can feel unbelievably good because of the nature of my practices. So I think there's nothing wrong with feeling good or feeling great. It's just doing it in a way that is healthy. The endorphin rush from exercise, or, there are other ways of feeling good, right? Ashwagandha. Have you heard of ashwagandha?
No.
Ashwagandha is the first thing I give my clients, or I recommend that they take. Ashwagandha is an Ayurvedic root, and it's an anti-anxiety medication. It's really powerful. It just taps into the nervous system, and it's anti-anxiety.
See, this goes back to the potential pub idea.
So it's with an Ayurvedic herb pub.
Yeah, you could have all these different herbs and stuff, and you go there, and it's a corporate high performance hub. You go there after work.
But we're cutting this bit out.
I'm going to have to take out a loan for this. I'm taking a loan out of Starless.
Mate, I'm investing. I'm in.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting stuff.
But the bottom line with this is, I think as human beings, the thing I've learned in my recovery is everybody wants to change the way that they feel, right? And there are ways of changing the way that I feel, right? If I'm about to go on a stage, I'm shitting myself. But I now have breathing techniques and mindfulness techniques that enable me to change the way that I feel. I said I was on a stage, I've got a speaking mentor who knows cricket, and I said when I was on the stage, it was how I always wanted cricket to feel. Right, now when I used to walk over that line, I would crap myself and I'd lose control of the ball. I now have a capacity to be able to control myself because I have disciplines and practices, I'm sober, and there are ways of accessing these states. I mean, some of my recovery has been using psychedelics. I've done shamanic psychedelic journey in psilocybin. When I started reading the studies on addiction and psilocybin, it's like, well, of course I'm going to do that, right? So I spent 3 years studying that, and then I did high-dose psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms. Okay. My culture taught me that is a drug and I shouldn't do it. It was not pleasurable. It was a therapeutic dose with a proper therapist, and that's been transformational for me. So our culture, the way that my teacher says, you got cocaine, booze, etc., not good. But there are some things that we've got around us which are good for us. A lot of Silicon Valley, they microdose. A lot of Silicon Valley are microdosing psilocybin. Sharpens the mind, deals with mood. There's huge literature now and amazing results in the complete cessation of depression through microdosing. So I think we're microdosing in your pub. That's my
Yeah. This is actually getting cut out because I might actually.
Well, I've got there's a friend of mine who's a former rugby player, Richard Thorpe, who played for Wasps and Harlequins and Canada. Him and his brother are investing into psilocybin research for concussion victims post-rugby.
Wow.
So they invest in that. The space is a massive space. And this is going off on a tangent, but run with it if you need to. The corporate high performance stuff, I've had clients who have gone and done ayahuasca, and they've come back and they deal with their trauma. They can focus. Most people can't focus because of negative beliefs, because of traumas, because of a head full of stuff, right? If you clear that up through therapy or whatever it is, you can focus better. I mean, there's a huge positive way of performing better using what we've got around us. Alcohol's not one of them.
No, and I think one thing I've noticed throughout, at least over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been trying to personally just kind of hone in what helps me focus, all of this, what makes me like a better friend, brother, and all of that. But it's I found that if I can compartmentalize the different parts of my life, it makes everything else so much easier.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like a lot of people have a million things they're thinking about at any one time, like worrying about what other people are going to think of what they do, all of these different things. But if you can kind of focus in on what you're doing in the here and now, making the most of that moment, it makes everything a million times easier.
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. And I think that might be where AI is going to be really helpful, because I take a lot of my mental chaos to my AI and it cleans it all up for me. I mean, it's I remember getting into rehab and I remember thinking, it was the first time I felt safe and I had brilliant people around me. And I remember maybe it was my first counsellor. It was the first time I started looking this way. I looked that way, right? Like performance, and I'd all been like this all my life of how do I look, or what result can I get? And then in rehab, it was the turning around and going inwards. And I remember very early on thinking, what is my mind? What are emotions? What's anger? What's sadness? I had a brilliant counsellor who said to me, can you define anger? And I went, no. He went, feels like you should probably be able to define it, right? So he taught me emotional literacy, which is anger is an emotional response to perceived injustice. He said, as soon as you know that, you know stuff. Or what's sadness? Why does it feel the way it does? What's anger? What's resentment? What's the difference between frustration, irritation, anger, and rage? See, they're shades. We have no shades in our emotional life. Or like, where do thoughts come from? Why do we believe them? Where does that come from? When did it start? Where does it end? Can you look at the thought? Like, if there's the thought, then who are you? And it was just this whole way of looking at myself. That's why I ended up in the Eastern world way of looking at things, because it was in the yogic thought. There's called the 8 limbs of yoga, and through breath and mind, body, emotion, spirit, I was asking massive questions. And I remember thinking, bloody hell, all I've been focused on is a job description, a job title, salary, climbing the ladder of cricket, getting the girl. And I just remember thinking, all of that was to distract me from this. So to bring your CEOs in, it is amazing what people achieve trying to avoid this. They'll become everything out there as a means of running away from this. I've met some of the most successful people, like I coach them, and they hate themselves and they hate their home, and they are motivated to become successful because they don't want to be home. They don't want to be home with their own thoughts, right? Just to sit. I think, is it Naval said, the source of all of our problems is our inability to sit on our own in a room in silence for 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think on that,
Just better be.
You should be able to, apparently if you sit in a room for like 2 hours with nothing but yourself, you can solve any problem that you come across in life.
Yeah.
But we just don't. I can't remember the last time I sat on my own and actually was in my own thoughts for like 2 hours. Because for me, my bike to work, my bike back from work is like my time. There's there's no music.
Nice.
There's no other people around me. That's just my time to think of what I'm going to do in the day. When I'm coming back, it's what I've done in the day. What am I doing tonight? And it's so good just to have that time on my own, but it's probably still not enough.
He's still, it's still sort of like, what am I going to do next? It's still that sort of like I'm talking about, and people call it meditation. Like I have that's a core discipline of mine is meditation, and meditation is nothing like it because it's not a doing. It's not a doing. I mean, we call it well-being, right? But everything in well-being is well-doing.
Yeah.
It's like the people say well-being. We don't even like look at the word. It's being, right? Well-being is not going to the gym. That's a doing.
Yeah.
Well-being is not running or being on your bike. That's a doing. They don't call it well-doing, right? It's well-being. Just to be able to be is that's what I found in all of the spiritual traditions in Buddhism and Hinduism and in the Eastern world. That's what they've decided life is all about, is mastering the art of being. And success is a science, right? If you A plus B equals C, if you lift enough weight, you'll get strong. Being, just to be able to sit and be and watch this is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something I like struggle with so much. I'm always like, what's next? What can I do? And it's something that honestly I've realized over the past year, it has such a negative impact on how you feel day to day.
Well, that's a good point, that the shame involved in doing nothing.
Yeah.
Like I should. I should.
So
that's
much.
huge, right? Because our culture, I remember my life's starting to move in a really good direction. We've got a mentor. She's our boy's godmother. Her name's Donna. She's worth loads of money. She's like just like millions of dollars. She's in Australia. And I remember I'm from working class family. Have got fuck all, right? Yeah. And I went and lived with her with my wife before we had kids. And I remember looking at her and I remember thinking to myself, she doesn't do anything. She doesn't do anything, right? And I was looking on her land and I went up to her. She's in her 60s. She's a brilliant woman. She's one of my best friends now. And I said to her, Donna, I hope you don't mind. She goes, no worries, Simon. And I said, can I be real with you? She said, yeah. And I said, you do fuck all. And she went, it's not what you do, Simon. It's how you feel about what you do. And she started teaching me. I met someone who had everything and she didn't do anything. But she had no shame and no guilt. She's totally at ease, relaxed, healthy. She's in her 60s. She looks like 40. She's just easy. And then I think, and she said to me, where do you come from? Tell me about your culture. And I was like, I come from working class England. And she's like, and does hard work equal money? And I'm like, no, it doesn't, right? I've got all this. And she taught me that success is how you feel and just to be able to be. I currently coach people who are, one guy in particular is worth hundreds of millions of pounds. He has no peace of mind. And even he said to me, he would give it all up to have peace of mind. My missus and I, we lived in Bali. They have nothing, but they have peace of mind. Right, peace of mind is the most valuable thing, but we sacrifice our peace of mind to try and get peace of mind later. We're like, I'm going to just sacrifice and I want peace of mind when I'm 60. And when I've got a house and I've got my bank balance, then I'll have peace of mind. But by the time people get there, they're just knackered.
Yeah, and I don't know, have you watched the Modern Wisdom podcast?
Yeah.
And I was watching one with Jimmy Carr.
Yeah.
And they're just talking about when will you feel like you've arrived at where you want to get
Brilliant.
to? And it's almost like if you have this constant mindset of wanting to get to a point, you're never going to feel like you arrived there. You're always going to want that next thing. You might want a Porsche or something. And you get that Porsche, you want a Land Rover, you want a Ferrari, you want this.
There's a great story. There's quite a famous story, so I apologize if anyone's heard it before, but there's a Japanese fisherman in the 1950s and he's just on the side in Japan somewhere. And the Americans are there because they're post-Second World War. But there's just this Japanese guy, like Mr. Miyagi from the character. He's just catching fish. Yeah. And he's 70 and he's just catching all these fish, just sitting there, just piling up. And this American businessman comes along and goes, fucking hell, you're a really good fisherman. And he just goes, thank you. And he says, no, you're amazing. The American businessman's looking at him going, yeah. He goes, no, do you know what we can do with that? The Japanese guy goes, yeah, what? And he said, well, there's a market down there. Do you sell these fish? And the Japanese guy goes, no, I just catch them. He says, well, we could take them down to the market and we could sell the fish. Japanese guy goes, okay, but then what? He says, well, then we could use the money and we could get a second rod and you could teach another person how to fish just like you. And he goes, okay, and then what? He says, well, then you'd have two people. We could make twice the amount of fish. We could go down to the market. We make twice the amount of money. He says, well, then what? He said, well, then we get a third rod. And then maybe you could train someone to train the people to make the fish. And then you could just have a team of people who are fishing and you could just train them. He goes, okay, and then what? He says, well, there's a gap down here on the jetty where we have to travel. We could actually start our own market because we'll have so many fish, and we could like corner off the market, and we could have 40, 50 people here, train the trainers. Oh my God, this could be massive. And the Japanese guy goes, yeah, and then what? He says, well, then we just be making so much money. And then he goes, yeah, I know, and then what? He says, well, then with all that money, we could do whatever we want to do with whenever we want. And the Japanese guy goes, yeah, I know, I just want to fish.
Yeah.
Honestly, the amount of 55-year-old equity partners in a law firm I work with, and they've lost touch with why they started. And I feel that as a father, right? Like I have to provide. There's something I have to do all the time that needs to provide. I have to make the ends meet. We have to survive. But the amount of people who sell their own souls to do that, right? They give up their happiness or joy to do that, right? It's it's never been an easier time now to do something you love and make money doing it.
Yeah, so just on that conversation, I think a lot of the problem is, especially with a law firm and accountants, is you get paid by time.
Yeah.
So what I find is, I now have started to think more, what am I doing with my time? And if I'm not doing anything, I feel so unproductive. So if I have an hour, I'm like, what could I do with that hour to be as productive as possible? And we probably both feel the same, because that's also why we started this podcast. We were thinking we want to be able to relax when we're 50, 60. So we want to do, but this is also a nice thing to do.
I'm just enjoying it.
Yeah. But it's thinking, you think about the future. It's like where do you go on to? But moving on from that, and now you've got 2 children. You got your wife. When did that switch turn to you to kind of settle down? And you've been, you've not quite settled down. You've got whole people group and that side of things. So when was that switch in that you almost thought, right, now is the time where I'm going to, settle down, basically?
I remember in early recovery being single, and my recovery journey is 12 steps. And one of the steps is you go and make amends and you make everything as right as you can do. Because obviously in my drinking days, I left a really big mess and hurt a lot of people. So I was in that process, and I remember being in Bali and I was thinking to myself, what do I want to do with my life? And at that time, I had the whole future ahead of me. And I remember very vividly being in a cafe in Bali and there being 40 to 50-year-old men in there, and then there was these like really attractive yogi girls, right, and women, right. And I remember just looking at these men, look at these girls, and there was just this scene going on where it was like, I remember thinking, where do those men come from, or where's their families, and where, like, who are you if you're here right now avoiding proper responsibility? And I remember just reflecting on just like a deep feeling that I wanted to do something proper with my life. And so it was around that time that I also started coming into, very early on in recovery, I got very aware that I was going to die. At some point, we're all going to die. And a part of my spiritual training or practice in with my higher power was to really come to terms with that. And then there was a feeling that I wanted to go home. And it was actually a guy called Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you've heard of Jordan Peterson, but Jordan Peterson was massive for me because he said, take on as much responsibility as you possibly can. And I remember thinking I never thought life would be easy. And he said the antidote to suffering is to take on as much as you can. And then around the same time, Jess, my wife, came along. And I think I just wanted to make the most of the chance I've got in my recovery. I wanted to become the men that I've admired in my life. They're family men. They're men with businesses. They're men who have started something. I wanted to make a difference and help other people because that's always been very rewarding. And I wanted to come home. And then when I met Jess, it was a matter of, when you meet the right woman, you just want to settle down and have kids. I just thought, wow, she'd be an amazing mum. And it wasn't easy to become pregnant. It's not been easy to do any of that. We had to come home in COVID, start a family, raise kids in COVID. As a young man making away in a startup, I could take a salary, and this would be way easier. This much easier on a salary, but I've chosen to do something that I want to do, running a business and then delivering coaching are two completely different things. Like, I'm a really good coach, I'm a really good speaker, I'm crap at business. So I have to work really hard, and I've had to learn a lot about lead generation and running a business and building people around me. I don't think, I'm good at what I'm good at, and I'm not. So I think for me, it was, I wanted to when you wake up at 31 and you've got like a life like I had, it felt like a failure and all this pain. I think I wanted to make the next half of my life to balance it out a bit, right? And the people that I see that, I think we think pleasure, culturally there's been a message that like freedom feels good, right? But freedom doesn't feel good. Freedom is paradoxically where there's a burden of responsibility. That's where real freedom is. If freedom was just like, then all the drug addicts would be the freest people we know. Yeah. So I think I sort of had that awakening of like, okay, if I want to become free and if I want to become the best I can be, I need to take on as much responsibility as I can. And that was Jordan Peterson's teaching. He said, you should pick up your damn cross, was what he said. Yeah. Pick up your damn cross and bear the weight of your suffering. Yeah. And it was a strong message, it was like, and I saw all these people who would choose comfort. I had hard teachers, hard mentors, hard coaches who told me the truth. Said, when you're in your 20s, you guys are different, but when you're in your 20s, that means, you're in your 20s. If you're a 20-year-old, 40-year-old, life doesn't treat 20-year-old, 40-year-olds very well, right? If you think, we all know a 40-year-old who's 20, right? And that life's not kind to those guys. They wake up at 50 and invariably that's not a good day. Yeah. So I think I just sort of started to see the whole thing and think that I could see a pathway that I wanted to walk along. And then what I learned from cricket was to find people who are better than me and learn from them. And it's so easy now to learn. All my best mentors have been online. The people I've even met, I just would consume. And then the last thing I did was I'm really intense and I'm an addict. So I just decided I was going to turn my addict onto making my life the way I want it to become. Yeah. But then kids come into that and just chuck the whole thing out the window because it's when you have kids, none of that means anything. They just want me to be on the floor roaring like a lion, and I think it's and now I work with people in the corporate world. I think I can see the problem a bit more, and it's not like I think everyone should become entrepreneurial, because I think there's so much in leadership and there's so much that, the society, if it's going to move forwards, it's probably corporately. There needs to be an awakening within corporate culture. Yeah. It's not going to move forwards without the corporate awakening. So I can see the corporate awakening. But I had a mentor, the guy who co-founded the whole people with us. He died 2 years ago. He died as we were co-founding it. Rob, he was so wise. He said, what's the fastest growing thing on the planet? And I went, okay. And he said, if you grow rapidly, so everyone wants growth. If you grow rapidly at the expense of natural life, so if you're growing but everything's dying around you, then that's cancer. See, cancer is one of the fastest growing things on the planet. Rapid, right? He said that's most people's growth strategy in corporate culture. They grow at the expense of their people. They grow at the expense of the natural world. He said the corporate world is a cancer.
Wow.
Yeah. He said growth, you've got to be careful with your growth strategy. Now, if you grow and it's in the inclusion of everything around you and everything grows around you, that's nature. Yeah. Because when a tree grows, everything grows around it, right? Nature's abundant. He said, so you've got to work out growth is natural, abundance is natural. But there's two ways of growing. There's growing at the expense of everyone around you, and then there's growing at the inclusion of everyone around you. Yeah. He said, but he saw corporate culture, and then he died. He saw corporate culture as a cancer.
I see that. I completely see that. All the massive firms in all industries. It's such a hard thing to do because the people at the top don't necessarily have oversight of everyone down the firm, but there is so much potential to change that side of things and get it so people see the wood through the trees.
I'll tell you a good story. I did a workshop in Dubai for a global law firm, and I work with a management board member, big dog. My work's private and confidential because they tend to come to me when they're struggling. I'd been working with him for 2 years and we'd had really good results. He wasn't sleeping. This guy was the best lawyer that they've had, right? Everyone knows who he is, a global management board member. He's a big dog and bit of a tiger, right? So we go and do this workshop and I get told by the people who employ me he's going to be there. So when you see him, make sure you don't act like you know him because then everyone will know he works with you. Yeah. So I was doing a workshop on well-being and high performance and burnout and balance. And he's in the room. And I've got 50 equity partners in Dubai from around the world doing this workshop with me. He's there on the table. And I'm talking about balance and Shane Warne. And I'm just talking about how people at the top don't have balance, right? Anyway, did the Q&A at the end, and there's a lot of like men in the room, and the lady who employs me, awesome lady, really cares about the partners. He puts his hand up and in the Q&A bit, and I do this thing where like, yes, hello, you know, like, may I answer your question? I know this guy really well. He stood up in front of everybody and he went, I've been working with Simon for the last 2 years. When I started working with Simon, I had crippling anxiety. I think I had PTSD. I wasn't sleeping. My marriage was suffering. He said, and even though I'm a global management board member and I'm really successful, I haven't felt like a success. I have imposter syndrome. And I just generally have not been happy for a really long time. I'm working on it. But I think everybody should see a counsellor or a coach or just someone. And then he sat down. And we went, oh, shit. And then Emma looked at me, the lady who runs it, and she looked at me and I went, then another guy stood up and went, yeah, I'm struggling. And then another guy stood up and said, yeah, I've been really struggling for another time. Another guy stood up, said, I actually been having suicidal thoughts for a really long time.
Oh, wow.
Another guy stood up, said, yeah, I can't stop drinking. Over the course of the next 10 minutes, everybody in that room opened up because one global management board member opened up about his struggles. That's the power, like, and then now that part of the company, they're realer, they're more authentic, they're actually talking properly, and that's how cultures change, is when one person wakes up and says, this is fucked, I'm struggling, I'm fucked. I mean, imagine if the CEO of your company has just said, just got to let you all know I find this really, really hard, and I know you do too, but we're in this together. You'd go, right, come on, we can do this.
Yeah.
All it takes is one. It's like,
Because we have a thing called busy season in accounting, which is when companies sign their accounts.
Yeah.
So that's when it heats up.
Yeah.
And it helps so much when the people higher up go, you know, we're in this together. Just remember that it's not just you doing the hard work. It's not just you doing the late shifts. We're all doing it. We're all in this together. And afterwards, we'll have a drink.
Yeah.
Or we'll have dinner. So you do. It comes from top down. That seems to be a common theme. It needs to change high up, and companies are changing. You know, diversity, inclusion, and that side of things. But a lot of it, I feel like, is like a facade. It's like it's hard. It's so hard to do. It's going to take change over the next 10, 20 years.
I think it's going to get way worse and it's going to get better. I've got to say, I think we're in for a really rough time. I think the next 10 years are going to be increasingly difficult. I think suicide statistics are going to go up, not down.
Wow.
I think burnout is going to start. I think more suicide is linked to burnout than depression. From what I've seen, I don't think depression, people who are depressed, they just tend to be depressed, where there's people who are burning out and they're stressed, they look for escapes. I think the answer is your generation and the generation that's coming up, these podcasts. I think there's a disengagement thing happening at the moment between Gen Z and leadership, and it is just awesome, because what's happening is you've got a whole part of the workforce going, no, I don't want to do it like that. Mm-hmm. They're opting out. They're going, no, I'm not going to suffer for your dream. Actually, balance is really important for me. And what are your values? And no, I don't do things that don't align to my values. On the flip side, on the flip side of that, you've got a generation coming through who may not spend enough time in one thing to become great at something because they're flip-flopping about. But I think there's a real shift happening, but I do think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. Yeah. I just kind of wanted to go back to being a father, because I was lucky to have a really supportive dad growing up, and he had a massive impact on my life. I wondered, I've watched so many videos and heard so many people talk about how as soon as you have kids, it feels like nothing else matters. Is that something that you've experienced?
Yeah, it's like that. Oh, it's frightening. Yeah. You go from being the most important person in your whole life to, like, you know, before I met Jess, I was just me. And, like, even if I'd be dating, I'd be selfish because, right, when you're single and you're just selfish, it's all about, like, feeling good or any of that sort of stuff. And then I met Jess, and then it was a wrestle to drop my ego there and make another person more important. I'm still in that wrestle too. But then when kids come along and you're like, I think as men, feeling is just not something we're taught to do particularly well, like deep feeling, but there's a feeling that comes when you have kids, which for me, Jimmy Carr said about his daughter, he said when he looked over his daughter and she was born, because he had kids later on, he went, oh, my heart lives outside my body now.
Yeah.
He just went, oh, that's my heart over there. You know, I now also have got this thing. I said to my friend the other day who's got kids, I'm also struggling to take people seriously who don't have kids. So I've got like 28-year-old men and they go, oh my God, I'm so busy. And I'm like, they go, I'm so stressed, I'm so busy. And I'm like, get married, have kids.
Yeah.
I'm becoming more like that. Get married, have kids. Don't wait for some perfect woman to come along. Commit to someone on this long journey called marriage, because it's really hard, but it's the best thing ever, because it will teach you everything you need to know about yourself.
Yeah.
Because my kids don't give a shit who I am. Like, someone will be watching this, they'll be going, oh, well, you know, former professional kid, they don't care about that. My wife doesn't care about who I am or was. You know, my teacher says, you know, you've got a good woman when you come home and you go, darling, I've won $1 million. I just won a deal, and I just got £1 million deal. And she goes, yeah, I know, but where's the milk?
I agree.
Where's the milk? Go buy a fucking dairy. She's like, yeah, I know, but you said you were going to get the milk, right? Winston Churchill's wife was interviewed, and this is how I think about a good woman, right? A good woman. Everyone should find a good woman. Winston Churchill's wife was interviewed, and he said, how do you feel about the fact that you're Winston Churchill's wife? And she said, my love, if I'd stayed with my ex, he would be Prime Minister.
I love it. Love it.
Socrates, wisest man in existence, according to the Oracle of Delphi, came down into the square one day, and he had a really difficult wife.
Yeah.
He had a really difficult wife. Apparently she wasn't very good looking. She was hard work. And all the men in the square were going, Socrates, your wife's hard work. She's not even very good looking. And he said to him, you are all learning to ride on a donkey. I am riding a wild stallion.
It's so good.
I think everyone waits for like nice, you know, but actually to get married, settle down, and have a proper relationship with someone who needs you to be better. I think as men, we need that. We need someone who can help us bring that out of ourselves, right? Whether it's fathers or good, but getting married and having kids is the pathway.
Yeah, it is hard work. It's hard work. Just like, I know I'm still at quite early days. We've been together for almost 4 years now, but it's even still, you've got an expectation, you've got something that you're expected to do, and you've got the responsibility to do. Try to make them as happy as possible, try to do things for them or whatever, and it's not going to go. So it pushes you to be better, like, all the time. It's something it's constant. It's not like work where you're working for 8 hours and then you're gone. Yeah. It's constant self-improvement to try and improve that relationship.
Yeah, definitely. But then there's also the other part of it too, which is to remain true to yourself, right? Because I see a lot of people who, you know, happy wife, happy life, or they make it all about I know a lot of men who are burnt out, resentful because they've made everything about everybody else, and what about them? And I know men who don't have friendships, you know. So I think the big thing there too, the pathway of being a father is also to take care. My big thing is to try and take care of myself as well, right? It's, if I just sacrifice everything of mine for Jess and the boys, there's no me there in the long term. You know, I could sacrifice my well-being. A good example is the other day I realised that, you know, we feed our boys really good food, and I'm just sitting there smashing sandwiches. And I'm thinking, I'm sacrificing, this is good. There's like a bit of a martyr in me of going, yeah, I feed my kids well, and there's a bit of me that feels good about that. And then I'm like, actually, I'm just going to teach them to smash sandwiches because they're just going to copy me, right?
Yeah.
So I need to be a good example. So there's everything in leadership is wrapped up in, I mean, it's a fantastic thing to do. It's very difficult. It's a very hard path to take responsibility like that. But I could, if you get engaged and, that's the pathway, I think that's the way. But, so I think they did a study on divorces and also unsuccessful relationships. Harvard did a study on relationships that don't work out and go toxic. And this was in the workplace and in marriage and in friendships. And they wanted to find the top 3 things that make relationships go sour. And the first thing was so far ahead of the rest of the data. And do you know what it was?
Money.
No, that would be that's what I'd say first.
Yeah.
I would say something basic. It's going to be. I'm never going to guess.
It was selection.
Right. Okay.
90% of it is selection. Think about it at work. 90% of your journey is in the hiring. It's why you hire slow and fire fast. If you hire the right person, the whole journey, so it's all about selection.
But,
so
but then earlier you said with marriage and things, you should just go for it.
I think if you found the right person.
Okay, right. People say if you know, you just know. Did you find that with Jess?
Yeah, but I also think I knew myself enough and I'd done enough. What I say to a young guy the other day, stop looking for your soulmate and start looking for your soulmate. Okay. That's why I got told that one, right? Like, there's all these people running around, they're looking for themselves and other people. I think there's a journey to go on where you need to know who you are and know what you want. I've got another guy whose relationship he's actually getting divorced because they got married too young and they married the wrong people, definitely. And he's already like attracting interest from other women, and just encouraging him to have a think about this. Like, I think it should be conscious. I knew what I was looking for. So when it came in, I knew that's what I was looking for. It wasn't a chemistry thing. Yeah. Chemistry goes. It's it has to be a bigger picture, fit into the vision, good friendship. Yeah. Most of long-term relationships when you're married is friendship.
Yeah, and just moving towards, obviously we talked about having your kids, meeting Jess, the startup side of things, because it's interesting how that fits in with yourself, and that we talked a bit before about having that creative side and doing what you want to do. So where does the startup fit into it, and why did you start Whole People? Tell us a bit about the company and then what you're doing and where you're going with that.
When we got home from Bali and we decided to have kids, I took a job in COVID, and it was a marketing job and it was a salaried job, and I was dying, just hating every minute, but paying the bills. So there was that going on. And then there's a story, my story was circulated on the Cricket Network. There's a video of me out there talking about suicide attempts and all sorts of things. And my phone was ringing in the background, and it was men who had seen my story, and they just wanted to know what I'd done. So I was having these conversations with men about my experience and the vast range, PTSD and addiction and suicide. I could talk from lots of different lenses, and I've had lots of different kinds of therapy. I've done CBT and therapy and psychedelics, and I just started to hold the space. There came a point there where I was working on LinkedIn doing marketing for my other job, and I thought, you know what? I know how to generate a lead. The twins were born. I was put on like government paternity pay, which was like £100 a week for 2 weeks. There was my wife double breastfeeding at home. And I thought, I knew a little bit about niching, and I knew a little bit about generating a lead. And I just thought, I'm going to generate a niche here where I'm going to privately coach. My first niche was private coach for male senior leaders who are suffering silently from addiction, depression, and suicidal ideation. That was my first one on LinkedIn. And I thought then I built a business model where I needed one coaching client because they were well paid, and that could feed the family. Got one and was hand to mouth for a bit. And then I got quite lucky where Clyde & Co came in, a good company, and I started working with the male partners, working them who were depressed, addicted. And all I was doing was, my first niche was I'm not a coach, not really. I'm not a therapist. I'm just someone who's been there. And I started getting really good results. Like, just men were better partners, and their performance was improving. And it was the last thing I was doing. It was just a safe space to be able to come and go, fucking hell. You know, it's basically my whole style is like, fucking hell, that's hard. Shit. How did you do that? I don't really know. This worked for me. Just sharing ideas and creating a safe space to be able to go, you know, I get people come to me and go, oh my God, I can't stop thinking about driving into the tree. And I go, it's a standard Tuesday for me. I think about it all the time, right? The mind is powerful, and share some of the stuff I've learned in the Buddhist stuff around the mind and how it's not my mind. It's not personal, and don't believe in it too much. And along the road, a lady came along called Nikki Murphy, who was my mentor, 9 companies, turned down Dragon's Den. She's on a board with Simon Cowell. I just brought in her through my lead generation on LinkedIn. And she was mentoring me. And there was another guy called Rob Weston who was also mentoring me. I always build mentors around me. I literally ask people, will you mentor me? And then I said to her one day, she said, well, it's going really well, because she was helping with the business. And I said, what is it that's working? And I said, well, maybe it's the lived experience thing, right? And she said, oh, don't even get me started on the lived experience. Do you know we send men in to the workforce to go and talk to women about the menopause? That's our culture, right? We send white men in who have studied it in a lab to go and talk about the menopause, because we go, the menopause is a scientific chemical reaction. And I remember saying to her, well, Nikki, you're going through the menopause. And then Rob was there. He was in recovery. I remember saying, what if we could build a team of people together who have been there? Because the one thing I was learning through all the conversations is that there was a really big problem in the corporate world, and that was addiction, depression, suicide, race, gender, ageism, Gen Z. It's just a big problem. What if we were to scale what I'm doing, which is just lived experience? And what if we took people into the workforce who could talk from experience? The interesting bit was the experience wasn't just well-being. It was like, when you talk to me, I understand well-being, but also understand high performance because of cricket. Nikki, she understands the female side of things, but she's also got 9 companies. So the concept was that we wanted people who knew what it was like to win and lose. So if I'd now, you know, we've got a guy on our team called John Pearson. John co-founded Virgin Radio with Richard Branson. Do you remember Shazam, the app?
Yeah.
He was the chairman of Shazam.
Wow. Yeah.
So this guy's a seriously successful guy, but he also nearly died of burnout. And we started to build the brand and the team together of people who, we say, more scars than medals. So when you're talking to our team, you're talking to real people. They know what it's like to be a chairman of a company and also have sick kids at home. They know what it's like to lose loved ones or go through chronic illness and have to show up. So we just started to build an offer and a team around, when you come and talk to us, you can talk to people who've really been there, and there's no bullshit. It's not corporate, but you know, we now have 30 associates for an associate model, 30 people. And my actual initial thing was I wanted to build like the All Blacks, of like, there's a challenge and we're going to go meet that challenge properly. We're not going to fuck about. We're going to tell the truth. For me, there's like a big Samoan bloke running at us, and we've got to run equally as hard back and need to tell the truth. And what I found along the way was that I think for a really long time, well-being was sacrificed for performance. So think about the successful person who has no balance, right? You sacrifice your relationships, your body, your mind to get the thing, right? So we know loads of people who are millionaires, but they're fucked. I then noticed that I think the pendulum has gone all the other way, and well-being is now comfort, right? And people now think well-being is like a yoga class at lunchtime. My feeling was that the most important thing we can do for our well-being is try and be great, to suffer forwards and to go, this is what I want to become in the future, and to go on this long journey, because I think confidence is built by competence. And I just saw this huge problem where it's like, oh, wow, well, woo-woo well-being, I call it. It's like, yeah, oh my word, I wouldn't be here without that part of well-being. But what I think people need to hear is that it's okay to be profitable, and it's okay to do a great job. And if we call a plumber in, we want the best plumber, right, for the money we've got to pay for it. And capitalism's fine, right, because there's no way of determining who's good at stuff. And people who are crap shouldn't be rewarded. Right? If you're crap at something, you shouldn't earn money from being, just because you think you're good, like you've got to be good at stuff.
Yeah.
And so we coming in at this, we're coming in to help people get the best out of their people using wellbeing, because we, like in sport, if you're well, like what you were saying earlier about, imagine if you had a company that didn't drink, so I think we're trying to bring the high performance bit into leadership. We are top down. So interestingly, I spoke to a high street chain this week, 10,000, 25,000 staff across the UK, big brand, find out what they're doing for their well-being. They look after everybody, not their senior leaders.
Yeah.
Right. No one's looking after the senior leaders. And I said, what do you do if your senior leader gets burnout? That's the guy that's going to cost millions of pounds if he goes down. Right. Where's he go? Is he honestly going to access an EAP and an educational, an employee assistance program? Is he going to go on an app?
Yeah.
Really, is that really going to deal? What do you do when, how much does it cost a law firm if a litigation lawyer jumps in front of a train like Vanessa Ford did last year from Pinsent Masons? How much did that cost Pinsent Masons? My 30 clients, 25 of them have gone through suicidal ideation. It's the number one cause of death in people under the age of 45. It's the number two in the people under 55.
Yeah.
It costs, the Samaritans did a report, it costs the country £2 million for every suicide off the budget.
Yeah.
It's incredibly costly, and people are waiting for leadership to look after them because loyalty is just plummeting. If you take care of your people, they'll take care of you.
Yeah.
And so we're coming into the market to sort of with that message, which is the well-being should make money, not cost money.
Yeah.
And the last thing we are is a yoga class at lunchtime. We're more like helping people feel seen and safe and heard and understood. So people, you have, in sport, you get buy-in.
Yeah.
Right. When you had a leader and you bought into them,
Yeah.
what you would give them. And I think burnout might be people, it's not about doing too much. It's about shit leadership because people aren't bought in.
Yeah.
I see that in work. It's sometimes, but burnout isn't to do with what you're doing. It's to do with resourcing, and that you're doing too much. Because the resourcing was decided months ago, weeks ago. And once you're in the boat doing the work, nothing can really change because resourcing's decided in other teams so it needs to almost be more flexible. And that's just, I think a lot of the big companies it's harder to be flexible because the bigger companies. But really, really interesting side of things. And yeah.
Yeah, I think I do really like the idea of the whole people group, just because I know so many people. I was reading a book the other day about how in this book they were saying life is kind of built on three legs. There's work, love, and community. And if you put too much weight into one leg, it's going to end up toppling over. And it sounds like a lot of these senior partners and leaders are just putting all of that weight into that work leg and leaving the love and community part out of it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think when you're talking about pushing yourself forward and falling forward, it's like it's on all three of those legs and making sure that they've got everything covered rather than just slamming work all of the time.
There's a good story about, I think, I've only got 3 stories and I would have told 2 of them, so I'll leave the other one for another time. There's a wood choppers 500 years ago used to go from village to village and challenge other wood choppers. It was like a big, dick measuring contest, basically. Yeah. And there was this one wood chopper, and he was the best anyone had ever seen. Young guy, and he could chop 100 trees in a day. And he just went for it like nuts. And he's never been challenged. The most he's ever come up against is like 60. So he's getting a bit lazy and he's pretty arrogant. But he gets this one village, and this guy goes, you're not the best I've ever seen. And he goes, what? He goes, yeah, there's an old man up in the mountains. He could do 130 trees in a day. I've seen it. He's pretty old now, but this young wood chopper's never been challenged. He goes, right, tell me where he is. So he goes up into the mountains, knocks on the door, and this little old man comes out. And he thinks, he's a bit disappointed. And he goes, I'm the best wood chopper that's ever. I can chop 100 trees in a day. I heard some story you could do 130. Is this true? And the old man, who's like 90, goes, whoa, just chill out, grasshopper. Yeah. He's like, That's true. Actually, my best was 145. But I'm very old now. I'm 90. I could probably only do 120. So the young woodchopper's like, what the fuck? You know, he's like, what? You know, sticks his axe down in the ground. He goes, I challenge you to a woodchopping competition tomorrow. So the rules are when the sun goes up, one goes east, one goes west. The young guy's down there early, pre-sunrise. The old man just rocks up in like an old pair of dungarees. He's got like an old axe in his case. And the young man, fucking like he's never chopped before in his life, just goes east. He's chopping, never been challenged. Old man just sort of starts the first tree pretty relaxed. At the end of the day, the sun goes down and the young man counts his trees, and he's done 115 trees. 15 more than he's ever done. He gets back into the middle and the old man is waiting for him, and there's no sweat on him whatsoever. And the young man can barely stand up, and he falls in a heap, and he just assumes he's won. And he goes, I did 115 trees, I'm the winner. And the old man says, well, grasshopper, I've had a pretty terrible day. I'm 90. I told you I couldn't do what I used to do, but actually I kind of surprised myself. I did 123 trees today. And he's like, and the young woodchopper is absolutely, for the first time ever, doesn't believe it. They count them out. He's defeated, mentally humbled, because his way, and he goes, there's no denying he's been beaten, and he cannot work out, like you guys are trying to work out right now. He goes, well, how did you do that? And he says, well, it's really easy. He said, every 10 trees I sharpened my axe.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Right, now that I've told that a couple of times on stages to corporate cultures, because it's like, our corporate culture is the young woodchopper. It's like, fuck off as hard as you can in that direction, chop until you die. There's so many ways of performing better if you can sharpen the axe. So we do this axe sharpening course with Whole People Group. It's like, well, how do you sharpen the axe? Like, if you find ways of supplementation, cold showers, dopamine increase for like 4 hours afterwards, there's ways of working with our energy which are wise. So I always say there's the current level of performance. People think if they stop chopping trees that their performance is going to drop. So the last thing they do is relax. But if you relax and it sharpens your axe, then you can go back in and you can be better later on. So I just think we are juvenile in the way that we do things. And I've seen that. You know, that's one of the reasons I love being a founder, is because, and having kids, it forces me, because I work from home, I don't work a 9 to 5 schedule. Some days I have an hour, and I've got to try and find a way of doing 3 hours of work in an hour. Some days I have to work at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I have to get out of that sort of 9 to 5, hammer it, work hard, hustle. It's all bullshit. Hustle culture is bullshit. It just exhausts people.
Yeah, we've actually seen a lot recently. We do send each other a few, shorts and things about, some of the most successful people saying it's all about, working incredibly long hours, working incredibly hard, which I'm sure a lot of it, the startup culture is, depending on the startup. But it's just social media, TikTok, Instagram, doesn't really help the case at all in not burning out, because people are. But it's also on the other side of things as well. I think Gen Z as well. You got new working from home thing coming up, so I think also you got people working less almost than what they used to. So it's really interesting, and I think it's.
I think that there are, like the wood chopper. I tell that story because it's there to inspire the thought of like, hang on a second. There's got to be ways of me working here. So I've set my ChatGPT up at the moment, and I put prompt in, I've generated myself an assistant, right? And I call him V. And I've said, you have an IQ of 3,000. I want you to be someone that Elon Musk is threatened by. If there's a shortcut that can be found, I want you to find it. Right? Like, I'm all about shortcuts and conserving energy, but also about alignment. So Donna, the boy's godmother and my mentor, she talks about alignment first. Like, Hendo, if you feel good, you'll play well. If you do an hour's work from a place of alignment and focus, you can do 5 hours of work in that time. If you push through, you can do half an hour. Right? There's just wise ways of working with energy. And, even one of the things Einstein said was if he had a problem and an hour to solve it, he would spend 59 minutes coming up with the right question. right? And we do this thing now with teams where we go, what's the question? And we'll do way more work on what is the question than answering you can spend 5 hours answering a crap question and you won't get anywhere near the answer that you really, really want. If you think about what the question actually is, then you can cut that time down. There's millions of ways of working smarter that conserve energy, and we don't do that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's similar to, I think it was Mark Zuckerberg says something like, if he has a task, he'll give it to the laziest employee he's got to find the most efficient way of doing it.
Yeah.
It's similar. But I'm kind of interested, if we move on back to Whole People Group, about your journey through starting the company. Kind of, how did you find, kind of, say, not starting a business before? How did you find that navigating your way and learning the lessons and figuring out those first few steps?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say is I'm right in it. You know, like we've got into debt because you take on debt when you start something for a long period of time. You work with no money coming back in because you start up. There's so much faith involved. I would say that my startup journey has been pre-reaching out for help and surrounding myself with good people, and then post. So now I've got really good people around me and I'm learning about how to start something up. You know, just recently I've learning about bottlenecking, which is basically when companies don't grow because the founder does everything, right? So I've now got people around me who I'm getting out of their way and they now build stuff. And so I think, I still don't know whether we'll be successful. I mean, we've got a great brand, we've got a great offer, but we're not a successful company or anything. So it's
exciting though.
It's exciting,
that's like every startup. You step into the unknown.
It's crazy. And I speak to, there's a guy in my network, Roy Samuel is a guy. He's got his startup machine, and there's another lady called Rachel Murphy. They come in startup culture, and you know they talk about grafting and how hard it is. And I'll ring Roy up, and I'm barely alive, and he's just giggling like a maniac on the other end of the phone because he's somehow started and exited 2 companies, and he knows what it takes. Yeah. If you think about, it's taking something from nothing to something. Yeah. That's to go from 0 to 1. It's easy to go from 1 to 2. 1 to 2 is easy. 0 to 1, to come up with a brand new idea and a way of talking or a way of thinking, it's really creative. I mean, it keeps me, that's what I love about it, but it's almost impossible. That's why startups just don't succeed. What is it? 95% of businesses don't last 5 years.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for, I know a lot of investors, they look for the person that's doing it rather than the idea itself. And when things get hard, are you going to be able to get through that hard patch with something you're passionate for? And it's clear in Whole People Group that what you've been through will be reflected because you're actually genuinely passionate about the company and actually making a difference. You want to solve a problem because you have a personal attachment.
If this was a laundrette, I wouldn't do it. I said that to someone the other day. I was like, there's no way on earth I would do this.
Exactly.
If it was just like a laundrette. I have to do this because it helps people. There was 3 of us that co-founded it together, me, Nikki Murphy and Rob, and we were building the brand, having a great time. Rob got a chest infection and died. And this guy was my mentor. Me and Rob and Nikki, we were so close. You know, Christmas coming up to 2 years ago, just one day, still got the voices. He just goes, he's in his 60s, he spoke like this, hello, old boy. He was like, God, sorry, old guys, I'm bloody bit sick, you know, and then he went to hospital and then we lost him. Oh. So Nikki and I have been through the grief of losing our co-founder, which gives me and Nikki, there's something steely in us because we're doing it for Rob, right? Like there's something in there, but it's really bloody hard. I mean, I've got John Pearson, who's just like a startup. He's the guy. I mean, he takes things from nothing to something. He's like a race car. Actually has a race car company, and I get to speak to John 2-3 times a week, and he gets to impart wisdom. So again, our USP is lived experience and wisdom, and we talk about today in this podcast. We've spoken about Hendo and rowing coaches, and to be surrounded by people who know what it is. This is where AI is going to fall down. Right? AI can't read a room. AI, when I ring John receives what I'm going through, or there's another lady called Miriam Jordan-Key, Mim, former global brand director of Weight Watchers. She's on the board of charities. Been doing this for 40 years. John, 50 years, Mim, 40 years, John. Or Nikki, 30 years, 9 companies. When I speak to them, they're receiving me through the lens of wisdom, and I am flailing around sometimes. And John said to me the other day, Simon, experience is what you get 10 minutes after you need it. That's what he said to me. And it was just, that was all it is. And it just made me feel better. In other words, it's meant to be hard, mate. Keep going. You'll be all right. Yeah. It's like that. You'll be all right. Yeah. Don't worry about it. If I go to AI will give me the list of 12 things I can do. When I ring John, he just goes, it's going to be all right. Yeah. It's going to be all right. You're doing great.
It being hard is, I guess, part of the reason it's worth doing as well, because if it was really easy, then everyone would do it.
That's right.
No point. So
that's right.
Yeah.
No, it's well, a family's like a startup too. It's the same thing. You have an idea. Me and Jess had an idea in a rice paddy in Bali. Let's go home and have a family. Same with Whole People. Let's build a brand and maybe it can be something. Yeah. But it's watching something grow. That's the most rewarding thing. It's not the result. It's watching it grow and develop and nurturing it through. It's and there's the other part of it too. I remember being in Canterbury. We've got the big cathedral. And I remember my geography teacher saying to me, this was 20 years ago, more than that, 25 years ago. So this was before now. He said, the problem with the culture, this was then, it's really a problem now. He said, we don't look long-term enough. And he said, when the cathedral was built in Canterbury, you built the foundation, your kids built the floor, and your grandkids built the roof. You didn't complete stuff, right? Your generations later completed stuff. That was the way of thinking, and I think that so much of what I'm thinking about at the moment is like, especially when you have kids, it's like, well, what are my kids going to be in? Yeah. And what are my kids' kids going to be in? Yeah. Rob, his education was in tribal cultures, and there was something called the Children's Fire, and it was in the middle of the tribal culture, and it was a system of government. And the government across all tribes across the world, and they had no way of telling each other, they all did this because it was wisdom, was you didn't pass a law through government if it harmed the children in 7 generations' time. And they only passed laws if it would benefit the children in 7 generations' time. They were all looking that far ahead. You now compare that to what we've got going on. Yeah, like if we say, will we be, do you, like if I ask, what chance of the human race got of being here in 100 years' time? You'll go, it's a bit iffy, isn't it? Like, it's a bit fucking iffy. Yeah. Right? Like, we don't know what we're doing.
That's a whole nother podcast.
That's another, There's like, so much going
on. Any
on.
culture that's played with technology the way we play with it, or they all fall. So we don't think like that. Yeah.
I think kind of just to start wrapping it up, because I think one question I wanted to ask you was basically the whole premise of this podcast is to talk about the kind of the general influence that sport has on people and how positive of an impact it can have. If you had kind of one bit of advice to someone, maybe going through their sporting journey at a younger age, what would that piece of advice be?
What level are they at?
Let's say they're 15, 16.
And they want to be, they want to be as far as they possibly can go. Go all in. Just go all in and just seriously go all in and don't worry about anything else. I would say just be obsessed and go all in. That's what I'd say to my kids. Yeah. If you really want to do it, go all in. Because actually the only way it will work is if you do. It won't become successful unless you become a maniac. So you have to become a maniac and you have to be completely obsessed. If you want it to become, the tough bit of that is the fall will be so far if you don't make it. It's the chances of making it are so slim, right? But if that's what's in your heart and that's what you want to do, you've got to be just absolutely obsessed. Yeah. And there's so many more layers to obsession. I do work with young people who want to be and they, you can always improve things. I always challenge them to become more obsessed, become more antisocial, become more disciplined with food, the gym, lift more weight, get more people involved. You can always go to the next level and you have to. Alistair Cook became Alistair Cook because all he did was think about scoring runs. There was nothing else to him. Now the challenge, if Alistair Cook had fallen off at 25, he wouldn't have anything to fall back on. The challenge also is he's now Sir Alistair Cook and all he knows is cricket. I mean, he's a dad now and people like that. But so I am an all-in guy. Some games you only get to play if you're all in. Yeah. I'm an all-in guy. Yeah. I'm all into everything I do. And I think that's actually a general rule in life. If you're going to do something, go all in. Or don't do it.
Yeah, and it seems like business is one of those games too. Like if you're not going all in on a business or a startup like you are. It's
Yeah, I think you've got to be all in. The challenge with going all in is I've got a whole people group. I've got my freelance. I've got my wife. I've got the kids. I've got my marriage. I've got my friendships. I've got my dad. I've got my well-being. When you're in a position like you start to have responsibility, it's like, well, how do you go all in on everything? Because it's like whack-a-mole. You know, and that's the real challenge later on, is balancing everything. I've got my well-being needs, my wife needs, my kids' needs, and we've got to mow the lawn, put the bins out. But that challenge is, you know, so maybe it would be something like, you know, take on the biggest challenge you possibly can.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, thank you very much, Simon, for hopping on the podcast. It's been a really interesting conversation. Hopefully we'll get you on again at some point, and we'll keep in touch 100%.
Yeah.
But thank you. And for the listeners, go and check out Whole People Group. Doing amazing things, and one I'm definitely going to keep my eye on in the future. But thank you very much, Simon.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
Cheers.
Brilliant.